Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and we got some great automotive news today with some Honda information, some Kia stuff, some very exciting Mazda stuff, which I'm gonna love, but Justin's not really caring for. Audi is releasing a new version, or well, slightly new version of their
Update.
R8 update. Yeah, um, Ford has a concept vehicle to give Jeep uh, a middle finger, essentially. Um, then we got the most exciting news this week, which is the Lexus LX. And then we're going to have a little discussion about off-road vehicles and potentially the Kia Carnival review, depending if we have time. But let's get started here. Let's talk about Civic Si. So, I mean, 11th gen Civic, we know it's available. We know that it's a pretty good car. I had it last week. It's fine. There is an SI version coming out. They're doing testing with the research team here. They put a giant wing on the back. They put canards on the front, which you're not going to see on the production car. But they are definitely testing, the vehicle itself, and kind of excited. This is going to be that affordable, fun to drive Civic that a lot of people are looking for. I mean, sure, it's not a Type R, but hey, at least it's going to be affordable.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they got quite a bit of tire under those fenders. Looks like a 245 or 255 tire. Big brakes on this car from the little snippet I can see. Not sure why they really need to camouflage it. I mean, there's not that much that's visually different. Like, I guess it's kind of camouflaged, but it just looks like a white car from most of the shots. Yeah, I'm curious what they've actually done to this race car in terms of handling and power and differential, and how much of that actually makes it to the street version. The SI now is kind of in a league of its own, kind of a dying breed, let's be honest. It's four-door hot sedan. Hyundai's got one.
Yeah, the
GLI's
Elantra
kind of
line.
given up. Uh, that's that's
That's
all I can think of.
basically it. Yeah,
Really.
this
Yeah.
just the two.
Yeah. But
The
this well, Honda's been in motorsports for in a more serious fashion than Hyundai has, I would say.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. What I'm most like, the only thing I can see about the exterior on this, comparing to the sedan that I saw, that I had last week, was the grill, the front grill. They're using the hatch front grill, which is the honeycomb slotted. And then the exhaust, you see a little bit of that tailpipe on the rear end. So those are the only two visual changes that I see.
Yeah.
Also, next to the grill, instead of being matte black, it looks like it's glossy black, which looks kind of cool.
It looks nice. It's less overbitey compared to the normal sedan.
That could just be the camo
Yeah.
hiding that a
Yeah, it's
little.
hard to yeah, you can't tell how big the overbite bulge is with the camo. But
Yeah.
yeah, it looks handsome, I think.
Yeah.
The sedan, this generation sedan is growing on me, and I think it looks better in the 10th gen sedan, and I don't feel that way about the hatchback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those cars you got to see in person to actually appreciate it. Because when I saw the pictures at first, I didn't like it. But
Mhm.
when I saw it in person, I was like, you know what? It's quite nice. It's
It
certainly
looks
quite nice.
smart and it's inoffensive, which is good for a Civic. I think the 10th gen they kind of push the boundaries with the styling. Like they're like, this is at the same time they're going after a different demographic. I think the normal boring people are going for CRVs nowadays. So
Yeah.
with the Civic you can push the boundary a bit more. That's more for the younger crowd, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of a company that is pushing boundaries, Kia. They updated the Forte. The Forte is basically a Civic competitor, and I mean, if we park this next to the Civic, it's quite different, right? Like the
Very
headlights,
curvy.
it's super curvy and they're super aggressive on it. Essentially, there's just a new update to the front end and rear end. Brand new headlights. They look actually pretty cool. New fog lights, new bumper on the bottom, and of course that new Kia badge as well.
The
Back end's not bad.
KN.
Yeah, no one no one understood when I posted a picture of the Kia logo. People were like, "Oh, I didn't know that was a new Kia logo. That looks so different."
Yeah.
The taillights, they match the front with the three kind of dots that goes across. It's kind of weird, kind of odd,
Mhm.
but it's fine. There's a GT model available in both sedan as well as that kind of hatchback look, and that's going to have that 1.6 liter turbocharged 201 horsepower, and you can get that 7-speed dual clutch with it. And then the other big upgrade is the interior. You get a wider 10.25 inch infotainment screen now. That's the optional screen. The base, I believe, is a 7 or 8-inch unit. The base, you get a wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but with the wider screen, you don't get that, like all Hyundai and Kia products.
I like their the tagline or their title for their press release. Kia Forte arrives with new design identity. And as I mentioned numerous times on this podcast, Kia has no design identity.
Well,
So
you
they
said that
keep
about mostly
changing
about
things.
Hyundai.
Oh, okay. Well, they both like this one's got a Hyundai grill. Like the lower grill on the bumper, that
Mm,
motif is straight off a Hyundai. Now they don't have a recognizable badge, and if I were to slap a Link and Co badge, if you know what that is, onto this front, instead of the KN, we put Link and Co on there. This could pass for a Chinese vehicle. And I said that about the Kia, the midsize SUV as well. That it
Sorento.
looks great, but it looks Chinese. Like it could be anything.
Yeah,
It's just an amalgamation of different design language that like it's nice, but doesn't mean anything.
yeah.
And I think they're doing it again with this one, this facelift. They put Hyundai's bumper on it. They did this 3 dash thing, which is on some models but not all, and it doesn't look like any other Kia model as we expected.
Yeah, and it definitely doesn't look like any other Kia model. I actually really like the front end on the K5. I think the K5, it's like the
Mm.
perfect tiger nose grille. You got the heartbeat headlamp daytime running light, and I think that's what all Kia should be modeled after. But unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, and to me the K5 is like a nice, like good price point, I feel like.
Yeah,
The Forte, when you load it up, it's quite expensive, and it kind of defeats the purpose of getting a Forte or a Kia. I would probably step up to the K5.
yeah. It's actually not much more to step up from the Forte to the K5, and you get a lot more room. Sure, the base motor on that is not going to be as hot as the 1.6 that's in this. It's not going to be as sporty, but I mean, if you're buying a sedan like this, are you really looking for that sporty factor, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Let's talk about another company, Mazda. Said it many times before. I love Mazda. Shut your mouth for now, Justin. I know you want to say a bunch of stuff, but let me talk about this first, and then you can add your thoughts in right after. So, so Mazda is expanding their global SUV lineup. So there's a few different vehicles that's coming. So right now, in terms of SUVs, Mazda has the CX-3, which is their subcompact, their CX-30, which is their premium subcompact. They have their CX-5, which is their midsize, and CX-9, that is their full-size 3-row SUV. In other parts of the world, you can get a CX-8, which is a CX-8, which is a CX-5 elongated to have 3 rows. It's a narrow body, so it fits better with smaller towns, like in Japan. So what Mazda is doing is they're bringing out new models here. So they're bringing out a CX-50, which is going to be that midsize for the US market. They're bringing out a CX-70, which is for the North American market, which is going to be a wider 2-row SUV. A CX-90, which will share the CX-70 chassis, but 3 rows. What's interesting is they're also making a CX-60 as well as 80 for other parts of the world, so not North America, so for Europe and Japan. So the 60 is going to be similar to the 70, except not as wide, and the 80 is going to be similar to the 90, except not as wide. The 70 and 90, which is probably the kind of like the more upscale version of what Mazda is trying to design here, they're going to be a longitudinally mounted engine, which means the engine goes from front to back rather than side to side, like all Mazdas other than the MX-5. So it's going to mount longitudinally. So engine in the front, trans is going to be right behind that. It's going to be a rear-wheel drive biased system. I'm sure it's going to have all-wheel drive. And it's going to have a new generation of engines. There's going to be Skyactiv Ds for other places in the world. But here in North America, we're going to get an inline six. Presumably, it's going to be a turbo system, as well as a 48-volt mild hybrid system or a plug-in hybrid system as well. That's what's interesting. And they're going premium with this, right? You know, when you're thinking, okay, what manufacturers are going with the longitudinally mounted drivetrain? You got Mercedes, you got BMW, Genesis. All the new Genesis are longitudinally mounted. But when you think of, you know, Toyota, Nissan, like they don't really do that because you don't really need to. If you want to be practical in terms of space, you want just a transverse mounted engine because you want to have as much room in the front for the engine, drivetrain, and stuff like that, and the rest for the cabin. So, I mean, obviously we don't know anything about these cars, but here's what we can definitely say. The CX-70 and 90 is going to be smaller than like its main competitors that we currently see right now, like the Honda Pilot, Toyota Highlander. It's going to be smaller interior dimensions just because of the drivetrain. That's something that we already know. But it's going to be kind of a cut down or downscale BMW 5 Series. Or not 5 Series,
X5.
X5 and X3. I think that's what Mazda's trying to hit. Now you can say all the bad things that you want to say.
It's like we already know the weak point of the current Mazda SUVs, which is lack of interior volume. And then we push that one step further because we're so focused on quote unquote driving dynamics. I don't think the engine layout really matters that much. Like I feel like
everyone that has driven a BMW 228i, the Grand Coupe, will be like, that is not a true BMW because it's front wheel drive.
Exactly. But with the tuning, you know, there's so much you can do with a longitudinally or transverse layout, I guess. You know, we've seen Type R, minis, like all the JCWs, all the Golf R, and a bunch of other, you know, pretty much everything European and everything Japanese in the last like 5-10 years that's been like half decent to drive still has a transverse layout. So it's not like it's necessarily better. I mean, you drive a Lexus RCF. I love to throw that car under the bus, but that car drives like a minivan. And doesn't matter that the engine is laid out going this way. Like you know, so I think they're so obsessed with this this type of engineering that they're missing the plot is kind of my concern. Now, do we need a 2-row wide body SUV? Because to me, that segment does not make any sense. Like the Ford Edge.
I think what they mean wide body is it's not as narrow as like the CX-50, because the CX-50 is going to be based off the CX-30.
Oh.
So when they say wide body, I'm thinking it's going to be about the width of like the current CX-9.
See, I'm thinking Mazda CX-7.
Which is similar. which
is the
is similar.
CX-70,
Yeah,
which was an awkward size because it's like it's big, but like not really that big.
yeah.
Like
It's
physically takes up a lot of space, but inside still doesn't offer you that much space.
I think it's going to be about the same in terms of the size of like of the edge in terms of
Hmm.
the length, but I don't think it's going to be edge wide because edge is like stupendously wide. Like
Yeah, because it's gonna be an international. Well,
no, it's a North American car.
it's
That's
North
the thing.
American, so
Yeah, the 60 is going to be the European and the Japanese market.
yeah. So I'm curious if how big it's gonna be because I don't I don't I don't like that segment at all. The
The two rows, yeah,
the two row of, like large, like mid-size
yeah, like
segment.
the passport. It really doesn't make sense to get a passport over a pilot.
Yeah, you're taking up almost as much space, but offering significantly less interior volume.
Mhm.
To me it make and no benefit really in terms of handling, fuel economy, anything like that
Yeah.
really, because it's a negligible size difference.
Well, what they said is the CX-90 is going to come out before the 70, which makes sense. The CX-90 is going to replace the CX-9.
Mm.
The CX-9 is going to be no more. CX-5 will continue to be on the market. So the CX-50 is not a CX-5 replacement. That's actually quite interesting. And the CX-5 did get a facelift just recently. We saw the near front end and the rear design. There's supposed to be a new interior as well, but we don't know or haven't seen the pictures of that just yet.
Mm.
But
Well, I'm sure that when these SUVs come out, J.Mak review is going to be on top of that.
yeah, I'm pretty excited, especially a plug-in hybrid from Mazda. It's exactly what my wife's been looking for in terms of
Mm.
our next car. So who knows? Maybe. But let's move on and talk a little bit about Audi. So Audi has released a new variant or an update to the R8, the V10 performance, the rear-wheel drive variant. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so the rear wheel drive R8 is kind of the anti-Audi. Is Audi back in 2018 they did a limited run of the RWS or rear wheel series, I think it's called, which was limited to about 999 models. And the reason why people weren't that shocked by it is obviously because Lamborghini's been doing the rear wheel drive version of this platform for a while now. They did it with both the Gallardo and the Huracan, and then Audi comes pretty late in the game to make, you know what, we're gonna try this without Quattro, which is, Audi's claim to fame, which I don't think Quattro really means, like, has the weight behind the name Quattro that it used to back in the 80s or 90s. Nowadays, everyone's got like their kind of performance all-wheel drive system. So yeah, the rear-wheel drive version is about 140 pounds lighter than the all-wheel drive version, obviously because you have less axles and mechanical bits to weigh it down. So with this performance model, getting extra 30 horsepower, now up to 570. 570 again, it's not groundbreaking because we've seen this V10 make more. You know, 5 years ago, the Huracan with this engine was already 610, and so not really that surprising. And even when the LP 580 came out with the rear wheel drive, that's 580, not 570. Um, I don't know if this is just some like deal that, or maybe it's like one of those gentleman codes where Audi's like, okay, we won't surpass your horsepower figures with ours, but it is an increase compared to the production series V10 rear-wheel drive, which was 540 horse, which 540 in 2022 is a little bit underwhelming for a quote-unquote supercar.
Mhm.
Um, it's got a passive differential lock, so I guess that means it doesn't have like an active e-diff. It's more a simpler design, perhaps. and supposedly 60% carryover parts from their GT4 LMS model. I'm not sure um, what exactly that entails, because how different is a GT4 really? 60% seems like not a lot,
Is that
considering
just within the engine, or
I think it's the whole chassis and the body and everything. Um, it's got a unique carbon fiber sway bar system.
I just saw that. That's actually kind of
It's pretty cool.
yeah.
New bucket seats available. I guess some kind of more aggressive carbon bucket. And although the 0 to 60 time is the same as the outgoing, or I guess I don't know if they're keeping the normal V10 rear-wheel drive or if they're just all performance from now on. But the same 0 to 60, 3.7 seconds with the coupe, 3.8 with the spider. But top speed is up. Top speed is up quite a bit by almost 10 kilometers now, with a top speed of almost 329 kilometers an hour with the coupe, which is quite impressive, I think.
I
Um,
don't think that's 30 extra horsepower to get there. I think there would be more aerodynamic tweaks to help with that.
yeah, 30 horse probably won't get you an extra 9 kilometers an hour. 9 kilometers an hour, to those of you who have never exceeded, I don't know, 250K, does not sound like much, but there's like a severe aerodynamic
Yeah,
restriction when you get up to those speeds. So 9 kilometers is huge. Not that we'll ever really experience it without an Autobahn. Um, 40, 60 weight distribution. Now, here's the one that I'm not sure what Audi means by this is the standard brakes are 18-inch steel brakes, and then the optional brakes are 19-inch ceramic disc brakes, but they're not a 19-inch rotor because the wheel is 19-inch. So I think it's just overall diameter, including the caliper, perhaps. Um, but prior to this, the ceramic brakes weren't available, I guess, on the rear-wheel drive car. Now they are. Now the base price is only 149,000 euros, only, quote unquote. But being the hot, uh, you know, Audi flagship, it's a fairly exotic car. I think that's kind of a good price point, because even the higher trim 911s are up there. And R8's a little bit more exclusive, I think, than a 911,
mhm.
depending how you look at it. Uh, it's it's 30,000 euros less than the base Huracan. Now, it's not that exciting though. That's the thing. Is Audi just does not excite car enthusiasts quite like Lambo. Like Lambo does the STO, and that is like a wild machine. It costs double of this at least, but it's wild. Like they can push the boundaries a lot more, and I think Audi is so understated with their supercar. I don't even get the point of it anymore because okay, if you have 150,000 euros to spend, what's an extra 30, right?
Yeah,
That that to
to
me,
get the name and all everything around, like to
it's just a
carry a
more
Lamborghini.
special car.
Yeah, you're carrying around a Lamborghini key, not an Audi key.
Yeah, and also one thing to note is the weight difference because an R8, uh, so the I mentioned earlier the coupe is 140 pounds lighter than or no, sorry, the coupe, the rear-wheel drive version is 140 pounds lighter than the all-wheel drive version,
Mhm.
but the rear-wheel drive version is still over 3,500 pounds. So it's like I think it's like 300 to 400 pounds more than a Huracan. A
Mhm.
Huracan is physically smaller, lower. When you see them side by side, it's a much smaller vehicle, and they're not as similar as they look. And that weight difference, I think that is going to be that's what really distinguishes the two vehicles because they're not going to have the same dynamics. Even if Audi's tuning in all this, you can drift this in a controlled manner, even with ESC set in sport mode. Um, it's supposed to be an engaging car to drive, but I think the weight is still going to hurt it because the R8 is a more livable vehicle, it's easier to get in and out of than a Huracan, but the weight is kind of an obstacle, I think.
Mhm.
The rear-wheel drive Huracan Evo is about 3,100 pounds. So yeah, it's like a 400-pound weight difference, which is
Mm,
huge.
yeah,
Uh,
that's
you
two
know,
people.
yeah, and it's like for 30,000 euro, like 400 pounds. That's you can't buy that. Like,
Yeah.
um, and so I think the R8 just like kind of like the NSX. It's like you're kind of offering a decent value for the money, but people shopping in this segment usually don't care that much about value.
Value. Yeah.
And the other thing is they're also looking at residual value, right? Like a Lambo is just more desirable and ultimately will have stronger resale than the Audi version.
Oh, absolutely. Like not right now because used car prices are
Everything is
stupid.
insane. Yeah.
But I remember seeing an R8 for like 70,000 Canadian.
Oh yeah, the
Uh,
V8s are like it's
no,
all
no,
the
it
maintenance.
was a V10. It was a V.
V10 for 70. I don't know.
I think it was a V10. I
Probably
could
a
be wrong.
gated manual V8
Maybe.
perhaps.
I remember it was. I think it was just a rare one that I remember seeing. But I remember it was like 70 grand. I was like,
Yeah.
that's not much. That's like Lexus RX 450 money.
Yeah, you don't really see even Gallardos like early Gallardos for under 100
Yeah,
ever.
yeah.
Um, because if I'm gonna pay the maintenance anyways, which realistically is gonna be the same, at least I have the badge, the sound, the look, everything behind that. Um, and and I think people are just very realistic these days. It's like resale is resale. Like if I'm paying a little bit more upfront, but I'm getting it back in the end, then I'm okay with that.
Right.
Generally, if you have this kind of disposable income, anyways.
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember when the R8 first came out, Clarkson had said this is the most comfortable supercar to live in, but also one of the slowest. When it was the
Yeah,
V8, because it was the same V8 that was in like the S4 and
RS4.
yeah, or RS4.
Uh,
Yeah, it just
yeah,
didn't really make sense.
it's really slow. Like I've driven even the V10 manual one, and it's still slow. Like
Hmm,
because it's got maybe 500 horsepower, which nowadays, like I don't know, $90,000 M3 will destroy it.
oh yeah,
Uh, and
oh
be
yeah,
more comfortable and sound better. Like it, I don't know what Audi does to their exhaust, but it just doesn't have that Lambo sound to it.
yeah, yeah. But I'm like you said, I'm sure there's some sort of gentleman's agreement that the R8 is always going to be a step down from the Lamborghini.
Yeah,
They're not going to jeopardize Lamborghini sales for Audi sales.
yeah. It's
I
such
mean,
a good value though, this car.
maybe a
Like
used.
honestly, 150k euro is. I don't know what else you could get that has this kind of power, this kind of you know every. It looks good. Like this
Yeah.
generation R8, when it first came out, the second generation, I thought it was pretty ugly
Hmm.
because the headlights had this vertical teardrop, like rectangular grill right below the headlights. It just looked very clumsy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they gave it a facelift, and it looks a lot smarter now.
It's definitely a
Uh,
lot better now than it was before. I remember
yeah,
the first of the second gens. It's like,
it
I
was
don't
brutal. I think.
I don't
I
know how to
think
feel about this.
everyone just walked over to the Lambo dealership after seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, let's move on to Ford. So last week, I believe it was,
Mhm.
we talked about how Jeep are saying, you know, expedition owners or buyers that's buying this Timberline package are fools because they're not actually off-road ready. So Ford this week has said, you know what? Here's here's our middle finger. Uh, they offer this off-road um, no, sorry, off-grid concept. Sorry. So what they did is they took the Expedition Timberline Edition, which is already pretty rough and not rugged SUV. They made it better. So they put Fox shocks on it. The setup itself lifts at about 2 inches, so you got like 12.6 inches of ground clearance now. There's 35-inch AT tires. There's a rooftop tent. There's an awning. There's a trailer. Like it has all the things that you need to have an amazing time overlanding.
Yeah. 35-inch tires, like that is insane. That's Raptor size tires on a like 3-row family SUV,
Yeah.
which Jeep cannot pull off.
Definitely
You
not.
physically don't have the room to do that. I think. I'm guessing.
The,
So
yeah,
yeah,
this thing looks awesome, and it's just a big middle finger to Jeep. Essentially, that's basically what this looks like. Um,
yeah,
I I absolutely love the look of this. Like, I love big SUVs. Like, I always like their excursion when they had it. It's
mm,
like, this is something that I will want like later on in life. But then now when gas prices are $1.70, I'm like, I really don't want an excursion in my life. But EcoBoost, it's gonna be better than the V10 that the
yeah.
Expedition had. But this thing just looks so comfortable. Like, you can sleep inside. There's a rooftop tent. There's a trailer for everything else. Like, I'm yes, I know.
Here's my takeaway from this: is anyone can do this to an
Oh,
expedition.
absolutely.
That is the best part, is that we're not talking about like really bespoke air suspension that you need to configure and stuff. Anyone can put coilovers on their expedition. Anyone can go out to anywhere and pick up a set of 35-inch tires, or just slap some used Raptor wheel and tire on it and it would fit. And so that is because looking at the body, it looks relatively unchanged.
No, I don't think they changed anything.
So yeah, so that in mind, we can basically do this to any expedition. And so I think that's awesome because there's so much potential. And honestly, off-roading is not as complicated as Jeep might make it sound to be. Um right? Like a lift, bigger tires, like you don't need that much to get overlanding realistically. Like we're not talking about rock crawling and
Mhm.
crazy steep inclines and where you need, you know, an insane crawl ratio. For 99% of people and the type of overlanding, camping, trail driving that they'll do, this is like already overkill.
Plenty.
It's plenty. And while the Jeep can do like a crazy amount of ground clearance, probably Grand Cherokee's gonna have better breakover and stuff like
Oh,
that
for
for
sure.
sure. Um, how I would really distinguish it is that the Grand Cherokee does have a nicer interior. Like
Yeah.
to me, that is a bigger deal. Like to the actual consumer, I think that's what you should emphasize, right? You should talk about, when you're talking trash, don't don't pick on people for tow hooks. Like anyone can do a tow hook. There is not that much engineering or skill behind building a tow hook, right? Like that's what he's throwing shade at. And then, like anyone can pull this off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because anyone did. Lexus premiered the brand new LX. So
Yeah.
in North America, we don't get the Land Cruiser anymore. Just we don't get it. It's fine, whatever. Sad. Um, the LX is brand new, and it's based off that Land Cruiser. And there's a lot of cool bits and pieces here that is shared with the new Tundra as well.
Hmm.
But this thing looks absolutely boss. Like, it's such like that grill.
That is okay. So they got two versions of that grill, or a few versions actually, three versions I think I've seen.
Yeah, there's the titanium. There's an F Sport. The F Sport looks. I'm not a fan of the F Sport version. See if I can find a picture of it. Nope, no picture of the F Sport version. But the F Sport one does not look the best.
I
Uh,
I, I like the F Sport one.
you like the? I, I when the F Sport variants first came out, I wasn't a big fan of them, but I don't have a photo of it. That's fine. I don't have to look at that. But I think this is an amazing vehicle. But it's so different than what LXs used to be. So first of all, there's no more V8. We knew this. It's going to be a twin turbo V6, 409 horsepower, 479 pound-feet of torque, 10-speed automatic. Goes through an all-wheel drive system. No, well, a full-on 4x4 system with 4 low. In Japan, there's going to be a special off-road edition that we won't get. This off-road edition, it looks basically the same. It still has like sportier front bumpers, which to me it doesn't make sense. But this off-road edition, you get lockers front, mid, and rear. So it's G-Wagon type of front, mid, and rear lockers. You get 18-inch wheels and tires with AT tires as well. So like, it's actually kind of cool. I don't know if you noticed this, but have you seen the hood? We're in the center. There's a
Yeah,
divot. Like, I
it's
don't,
kind of cool.
I don't know why there's a divot. Like on some angles, the divot is more accentuated than others. Like it's
Mhm. I guess it's because there's just so much like flatness to the LX historically that they just kind of felt like giving it an extra styling element. And I think it looks okay.
I don't
It
mind
doesn't
it.
make any sense. Actually, it does give the no, it's a body on frame truck, so
Yeah, no
because
structural
there's
rigidity
no
here.
structural
No,
rigidity added,
no, not
really.
at all.
Yeah, there's no reason for it except just to look cool.
Yeah.
Like it's a power bulge of sorts.
So this new platform is 440 pounds lighter than previous. So
Yeah,
that's going to
and
be
that's
huge.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
weight is key whenever you're off-roading, and I don't know why people are so stubborn about body on frame because they typically, an LX 570 is one of the heaviest vehicles you could find on a trail if you do find one. Yeah.
They work great. The F Sport version, you can get 22-inch wheels because, that's what we need. Or you can get a VIP version, which has only 4 seats. And the back is like this full-on lounge seats. Actually, really, really nice and cool. There is a fingerprint reader on the start stop button. So if you press start stop and it doesn't recognize your fingerprint, so for example, you ate some Cheetos and you have fingerprint or Cheetos dust on your finger, you might not be able to start your vehicle. That might be, kind of sad. You might have to lick your fingers first before you can get going. But the interior is like all brand new. There's
Yeah.
2 displays. You get a bigger 12.3-inch display on top and a 7-inch display for your climate control. I mean, this looks modern, which is
Yes.
great
Thoroughly
because,
modern. It's
I
it's
mean,
been a while.
if you look at, okay, so right now, if you look at the GX that's on sale still, that looks like it's 20 years dated.
Yeah. That one with all the knobs and like silver plastic everywhere. They updated it halfway, but it's still it was not great to begin with, and it's even more dated now.
Yeah.
Uh, I swear the Toyota truck people, it's a cult, and they love that GX.
They do. I actually really like the GX, but there's never been a good one on sale for cheap.
Yeah.
It's
Like I literally had a conversation the other day. It's like, well, I want a GX 460 so bad. The ugly one, and it's like if you have to like start with it's the ugly one, like because it's like the 2014 before the
mm,
Predator grill with the dorky headlights.
yeah,
Like
but after the original 470,
I don't know.
yeah,
There's just nothing really like that compelling about that vehicle to me. Um, but I guess I just don't understand
yeah,
the Toyota truck lifestyle. It's like they talk about. I mean, realistically, it's only one thing, which is engine reliability,
yeah.
because everything else breaks too, like ball joints, control arms. Like
It's regular stuff.
yeah, it's not that heavy duty of a vehicle. The engine is very reliable. The engine will last 500,000 kilometers, no problem. But everything else still breaks around it, which I don't know. To me, I'm not that impressed. I'm not that convinced with Toyota trucks. Um, I think you have to have more than just an engine to really win me over with these body on frame SUVs.
what I'm surprised to see is no hybrid option. We talked a little bit about this off the air, um, because we thought, it's going to share basically all the drivetrains from the
Mhm.
Tundra. It should have the hybrid, but we don't get it. That's weird. I mean, maybe in the future, but yeah, I would have thought that they would bring in the hybrid version of it.
I
Does
think
this
the
make sense?
LX does not, like, it knows what it needs to do, and the bar is quite low.
Hmm,
It does not need the power boost from the hybrid, because I think that's kind of how that hybrid system is marketed. Is, the Tundra has a big uphill battle.
right.
As far as full size trucks go, half tons, the Tundra has a hard time. It has a lot to prove. The LX, on the other hand, has zero competition. If you want it, you want it. You don't want anything else.
Yeah.
Like, and so ironically, even though they're very similar vehicles and they're closely related, um, because of where the LX is, I think that's probably why they didn't do the hybrid, because maybe there's just not the space, because the third row is still garbage. I think you still have
Oh,
your knees
absolutely.
up to your chin,
Yeah.
because it's, I mean, at least it folds flat now rather than vertically, like folding
Onto the
upwards
side. Yeah.
onto the side, where you lose all visibility, all trunk space, and for what, two useless jump seats?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I guess that's why they did the four-seater configuration. It's like, okay, realistically, no one that can afford this vehicle is putting anyone they care about in the back of this vehicle. So let's do a nice four-seat configuration rather than this really compromised seven-seater or eight-seater configuration. Because, okay, body on frame SUV. We just talked about the Expedition. The Expedition is not that far off in terms of overall size or weight.
Mhm.
At least not the short one. The Max is quite big, but that's got a much more usable third row. Same with the Tahoe,
Yeah.
and these types of SUVs. So, although I know the Lexus and Toyota fanboys are still going to take this car over
Oh,
those regardless, um, I don't think, to me it's not that compelling still. Yeah,
well,
because this is going to be well over 100K.
here's what I'm gonna say. I'm gonna wait 20, 30 years. This is gonna be cheaper at that point. Then I'll buy one for off-roading.
I don't know if they get cheaper. Like,
my so one of my friends, he had a 2001, I think,
the
or
470 or
the
something.
four, yeah, the LX470. He
Yeah.
sold that thing for 8 grand.
Everything was broken on it.
No, it wasn't. It was just
I
a
thought that
suspension that was broken.
that's
It's
huge.
the air suspension. It was a problem for those cars, but if like the ball joints on that one was good, like there's no rust on it, you wouldn't go back to air suspension. You would just get coil spring replacements. You would just get a little error button that says your air suspension's broken. Then you get a perfectly working truck. I actually really wanted to buy it when he sold it, but timing was horrible. But
Speaking
anyways,
of,
talking about off-road vehicles that we
yeah.
really want. So I'll let you kick it off.
Well, okay. So over the weekend, Thanksgiving long weekend, we went out with, I went out with a couple of our buddies. We went to a few places in the interior of BC. They all grabbed their body on frame Toyota trucks, and I bought my uh, unibody hybrid Toyota quote unquote truck. RAV4 hybrid. Nothing really trucky about it, but honestly, like, some of the obstacles we came across, the RAV4 had an easier time just being 2,000 to 1,000 pounds lighter than some of these other SUVs. Especially because I was packing light too. It was awesome because I I don't need to bring a heater with me. I didn't even bring a sleeping bag with me. I just brought like two pillows and a blanket, because the car being a hybrid, like, I'm so sold on the hybrid now. So long term, from the start of the trip to the end of the trip, the RAV4 used about 60% less fuel than anything else. That we had two FJs, we had a GX 470, we had the third gen Forerunner, you know, um, usual suspects with Toyota off-roading. RAV4 went everywhere everyone else did. It's got 31-inch tires on them. They got 33s, but for most Forest Service roads, you're not going to need that much clearance yet. When the snow gets deeper, that will be important. But for now, we're kind of late or middle of fall. Uh, it's not too bad. The snow is not that deep. No locking differential, no differentials. Well, there is a front differential, but there's nothing to lock there. But I realized something that's pretty cool. The RAV4's ABS system is excellent, and the RAV4's traction control system is excellent. You just have to keep your foot on either the gas or the brake to keep both systems working. You don't want to let off the gas. You don't want to let off the brake, because when you do, then it just deactivates the system. So we went through a pretty twisty and technical trail up to Cornwall Lookout. This is near Ashcroft, BC. A lot of cows for some reason on this road, free range cows, like from nearby farms.
So you had dinner.
No, because that would land us in jail, because that's like theft or property damage over $5,000. And so we
If you
were
took a
very
slice.
careful around the cow. The cows were very courteous. Like they interact with cars quite regularly, and they see you and they're like, we're gonna peace out. Like, we're just gonna run down this hill, and they literally just bomb it down like a really steep hill, and they have like perfect traction somehow. But yeah, we came across some pretty gnarly bits, and the RAV4 is just like, you just hear a lot of buzzing and like hydraulic pumping noises, and it just gets through like no drama. I just kind of left it. It doesn't have the crawl control or MTS or any of this stuff that the LX would have, or any later model Toyota truck off-road model would have. But you just keep it going at like 10 kilometers an hour, and it just sorts everything out, which is nice. And then when you do get stuck, one of the annoying things about the RAV4 hybrid, because this generation no longer has a center differential or drive shaft, is that when the rear end kicks in, it's kind of abrupt. Um, I've had it where I'm turning in the rain, and then it kicks more power to the back, and then like the back end gets a little bit squirrely. Like it's an odd feeling, and you can tell, okay, there's a disconnect there. That disconnect off road actually works, because not only do you not have a big pumpkin to worry about, you don't have a drive shaft to worry about. It's pretty flat underneath. The nice thing is that electric jolt. The jolt is nice. Like, that's kind of the benefit of having a manual, is that you can rock the car. It rocks the car. And yeah, I never got stuck, like, even remotely. Just yeah. So that was awesome. Like, we were in some pretty deep mud. Uh, like mud up to our roofs, kind of mud. Like, we got some good wheel spin, but nothing too sticky. And yeah, in the climbing, so one of the major obstacles, we were up at Greenstone Mountain, and there was just right before the campsite, there's a really steep downhill, and it's covered in ice already. And going down this hill, all four wheels just lock up. You just slide, and you just end up going where the trail takes you. You have no control. Steering does nothing, brakes does nothing. You just end up wherever you end up. So we had to. That was, the night before we set up camp. The morning after, we're like, oh crap! Like, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get the RAV4 over this hill? Because we had no control coming down. Like, we're gonna have no traction going back up. Lo and behold, we send our most prepared truck of the group was this third gen Forerunner, Chris's truck, which has a winch, and it's probably the most setup vehicle we had. That one we sent it first, and then we sent the RAV4 second. And the RAV4, I tried it like taking a slow line and it wouldn't go up. But yeah, I just backed up and then just mashed the throttle and then it went up really easily, like way easier than we had an FJ manual transmission. And that had a hard time, even with a little bit of momentum. It just couldn't build up the speed quite quickly enough. I think the RAV4 being light and having low end power was awesome. And the other thing was I think the best part of off-roading the RAV4, fuel economy partially relates to fuel economy, is that I left it running all night long. Like I camped in that thing. I don't get why people love camping on the roofs because I feel like I want to store stuff outside and sleep inside. Like to me, it seems backwards that every overland guy is like, I'm gonna sleep on the roof. Like you have a perfectly good cabin and it was designed to insulate you from the
on
elements.
on a good summer's night, you get the breeze going. Like a rooftop tent makes sense
Yeah.
comparing to, because
But
you
in
guys
in
were
-5,
yeah.
-6, I'm like, I'd much rather be inside. I have power windows, right? Like if I need ventilation, I have a sunroof. I can store stuff on the roof. Um, but the best thing was the heat because I left it on, started the car, rolled up all the windows, locked the doors, and just crawled into the back and just laid down. And I left the vehicle on. So people online were saying that the hybrid system, if you leave it in park, it will only stay on for about an hour. But lo and behold, it stayed on for the whole 8 hours. Like it just what that meant is you just have normal HVAC working, whether that's AC or heat. You just have the engine kicks on every 5 to 6 minutes for about 45 seconds at a time. And the crazy thing is because it's an Atkinson cycle engine, it used like the fuel gauge did not move after 8 hours, which
Nice.
I was blown away by because I remember seeing on my older cars, like you could plug in OBD and you could see like instant fuel consumption and it'd be like 3 liters an hour or something, which is quite significant. You know, if you park for 8 hours, that's half your tank gone. Mine was it was above 3/4 when I parked it, and it was still above 3/4 the next morning,
Nice.
which is awesome. And yeah, the heat works great because it's just the heat you use every day. And I don't need to carry around a propane tank or gas tank or diesel tank to run a little heater and run vents into the car and stuff like that. It's less stuff to carry. It's all built in, and it's just so efficient that I use for sure less than $5 of gas to heat the vehicle the whole night. It is a little bit noisy when it kicks in, just as it is noisy when you daily drive the vehicle. Like you just, I changed the oil the night before because I'm like, I don't know how the drive is gonna be, so I'm like, I'm just gonna change the oil, put fresh because it was about 7,000 k old at that point. So I'm like, okay, I'll put new fluid in it, and yeah, it was pretty happy, and yeah, it was a great time, no issues, and oh, one issue, I did scrape the exhaust off. The exhaust tip got yanked off. It's in my back seat now,
But it's
but
just the tip. Like it's
it's just the
after the
tip.
muffler.
It's after the muffler. The hanger is like crooked now. Well, the hanger is okay. The rubber part of the hanger is crooked. I think I'm realistically just gonna hack off the tips
Yeah.
because they're the lowest part right now of the rear. Um, we were experimenting to see if we would air up or air down to go through the ice. And during our experiment, we had a little hill, and I aired down, and the car went up way higher than it could with it aired up. So we're like, okay, yeah, we'll air down. And then as I was backing down, it yanked the exhaust because maybe from the clearance or maybe because it was a lot steeper where I ended up. But no, that was an interesting experience. If I could lift the rear slightly more, that would be great. But the car has no skid plates, so no real engine protection, and so that's kind of why I have to go slower in a lot of areas. But for the real obstacles, it's all low speed stuff, right? You're not jumping off-road. It's just low speed crawling, and so you don't necessarily need that kind of protection. But it was great. We did two separate mountains, both over 6,000 feet high up, um, and yeah, deep snow and ice, and it was great. So that got me thinking. I'm like, okay, I feel like we need to build a throwaway off-road overland rig.
Not that throwaway, but just to
Not that
maybe
throwaway, but like let's say you end up you know binning it off-road, which stuff happened. I came really close actually. There was one part when we're coming back down from Cornwall. It's pretty muddy, pretty slippery, and icy. I slammed on the brake. Well, I had the brake all the way down, and there's a log coming right at my A pillar. I came about 4 inches from that log touching my A pillar. It wouldn't have done major damage, but it was close.
hmm,
And all of our trucks slid towards that log the same way. Oh, another nice thing about the RAV4 is just how small it is. It's narrow and it's short. So if you get at one point, one of our guys took us down the wrong path and we had to do a 3-point turn. And I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not in the F-150 right now because the RAV4 will do a 3-point turn just about anywhere. Um, you know,
yeah,
being 180 inches long,
the F-150 just would have just backed up.
it would be a 50-point turn.
you
Yeah,
you would have just backed up. It would have been easier.
yeah. I would probably just hook a chain to the front and ask one of the guys to just pull me and we'll rotate the truck the 180 degrees. But yeah, the maneuverability was great. So I'm like, okay, I want something small. So yeah, we're open to suggestions. I don't know. I'm curious what I can build next because I kind of want like a beater vehicle now. Like the RAV4 is nice and all, but it's too nice and it's a lease. It's a company lease. It's a company lease with a $5,000 damage waiver on it. And so that would cover that A pillar hitting that log, but let's try not to, you know, do that kind of damage to what is a very hot vehicle right now. I see people asking over 40K for them. I'm like, really?
So essentially, you want to find an off-road vehicle that we can have some fun in. Something that's relatively inexpensive, maybe, cheap to get parts for with good aftermarket support. And I'm just gonna say this: I really don't want like a Foreigner or a Tacoma.
It's just too
Uh,
easy and it's too expensive.
it's way out of my price range, and in terms of price range, I'm okay with spending like 4-5 grand. That's it, Canadian. Like that's a very small amount, but like we were looking on Craigslist beforehand, we found some really good options. There's like a Jeep Grand Cherokee with the 4.7, 5.7, 5 point something V8. I can't remember what it was. 5.7 V8. We found an SX4, which doesn't really like. Uh, we found
I like all Suzuki's. Let's be honest.
yeah, we found XL7s, Vitaras, Sidekicks, but we also want to drive this in a place where it's somewhat comfortable as well. So, if you have any suggestions, let us know. Comments,
Yeah, I'm
email
open
us,
to spending a
whatever.
little bit of money, like a little bit, and just it would be nice to make content. It would be nice to wheel, but one of the things I learned on this trip is that I want something that can make it up the Coquihalla at normal speeds. Which anything with, I look at these Japanese trucks and they're so charming, but honestly, with a 1.3 liter engine, it's gonna struggle to do 120 up hills. I don't want to blow a motor and get stranded in a right-hand drive vehicle
I don't
in
know where.
in the middle of nowhere with no cell reception. Like that is huge.
Yeah, which is
Even though
also
just about anything can tow it out, like
which is
anywhere.
also why we don't really want a Range Rover.
Yeah, it's tempting too because they're so cheap. Okay,
Yeah,
one of the things with the Range Rovers though is that because they break, I feel like people want the parts. So let's say we take one and then we destroy it. Worst case scenario, you
we can
strip that
part
thing
it.
for parts. and like, oh, the radio is going to be worth X much because the radio is going to be expensive, and you can't really go aftermarket with some of this stuff. This the front seats, they're good, and I'm sure part out value on a Range Rover is half decent, and there's enough demand that people need these parts. But
Maybe
at the same time, there's probably enough in the junkyard already that has catastrophic engine
are
failure.
quite broken. Yeah.
Yeah, true. I don't know. There's high demand and probably high supply too.
So yeah, Range Rover. Maybe we'll consider all options. Um, it's about time, but I just want to mention quickly about the review of this week, which was the 2022 Kia Carnival. So the Carnival is it's Kia's new minivan, replaces the Sedona that we had. But let's be honest, most people aren't buying minivans because everyone wants an SUV. The Sedona is one of the 4 remaining minivans you can buy. If I was to rate them, it'll probably be second or third on the list. It doesn't really excel anywhere other than price point. For this trim that I got here, which was the top SX trim, it had really, really comfortable lounge seats, which was amazing. But those seats also kind of like they get in the way. So like if you're using it as a people carrier, it just doesn't work well for that. Pacifica is my number 1. Sienna is my number 2. Carnival is my number 3, and Odyssey is number 4.
Damn, better than the Odyssey. I think they're close, but you know more about minivans than I do.
The Odyssey is really nice, but it's just it hasn't had an update, and it doesn't have all the features that other people have. Like
I love the look of this Carnival.
it looks amazing. Those front headlights, the LED, the daytime running lights, it all looks great.
Yeah, it looks
But
good front and back, which is
yeah,
something you can't say about most other minivans.
but it doesn't like excel in any space other than like the middle seat comfort. I mean, Pacifica, the plug-in hybrid variant is the one I would go for. You get the 50 kilometers of electrical range. It's a really comfortable vehicle. The stow and go works well if you're getting the regular gas version.
Yeah.
The interior is just amazing on the Pacificas. Yeah, it's a really, and they have huge discounts, like huge discounts. You're not buying at MSRP.
Big
So
dealer network too.
yeah. And then Sienna just makes sense if you're looking for a minivan because it's a hybrid. It has all-wheel drive. I mean, it's not the best all-wheel drive, but as Justin tested
Or
off
is it?
road, it's just as capable as Foreigner, a GX, as well as an FJ. It's essentially the same powertrain. I mean, who knows? Maybe our off-roading vehicle will be that Sienna Wilderness Edition, whatever they called it. We'll somehow get like really, really long springs, jack it up 3-4 inches, put 31s on it, and who knows? The Odyssey or the Sienna will be our next off-roading adventure vehicle. Actually, it's not a bad idea. I mean, it has all the room inside. It'll be really spacious.
Yeah. I mean the Carnival. Okay, so the Carnival full load, like not full load, not with the executive seats, but the way families would have it spec is still under 50K.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of it's a big deal, I think, for a lot of families. Like that's going to affect your finance or lease payments, because from what I remember, the nicer Siennas are closer to 60.
I have the price points right here, right after this ad. Of course, it's a
Brutal.
Nissan ad. Wait, I have the Odyssey and Sienna. So Sienna is just under 60 for all options. 58. Odyssey's 55. Pacifica is 65, but with like all the discounts, it was like 54 when I priced it up.
Yeah, but the Carnival is still a good chunk cheaper.
Yeah,
and you don't have to go top of the line.
no, You don't.
Yeah. So
And I
for
wouldn't.
low to mid 40s, you get a really good van.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend the top of the line anyways for family uses. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It is not the cheapest minivan that you can get. The Voyager or the Grand Caravan, so the cheaper
Oh, the
alternative
one that's been
of
around for 15
no no
years.
no no
Oh,
no
no, no. Oh, yes.
no the cheaper option of the
Yes.
Pacifica without all the other options, that's still a little bit less than the cheapest Carnival that you can get. But it's not by much, and the Carnival you get more standard features.
Hmm.
So
That's always been Kia's selling point, I think.
yeah, and in the US anyways, you have an amazing Kia warranty. So like
How
for a
does it
lot of people,
drive, or do we care?
no one cares. It
Yeah.
doesn't drive. There's torque steer. It doesn't handle as well as the Odyssey did. Odyssey drove better. The engine itself, like it's fine. It has more than enough power. But like when you throw it into a corner, the Odyssey just felt better.
Yeah.
Like the suspension was just better tuned. Um, but no one's gonna like throw this thing around a corner other than myself. You know, it's not designed
Mm.
for that. It's just like, does it have enough power for passing? It does.
It's
Does
almost
this?
300 horsepower. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's the one of the things of the Siennas that didn't have. It's just that top end
Mm.
power. When you're on the highway already, when you're driving behind someone at 100, you know, you want to pass that person. The 100 to 120 on a Sienna is quite a bit longer than any other V6 options that's available.
Hmm.
But starting from a get go, the Sienna has no problem keeping up. But yeah, that's really it. If you want a Carnival, don't buy the top trim. Don't buy the SX. Buy the EX Plus. You don't get those lounge seats. You don't get the sunroof in the second row. And the sunroof in the second row actually hurts second and third row headroom. So
Mm.
don't get that. Get the EX. That's mid 40s price range, I think it was. And it'll have everything that you really want or need in a minivan.
Mm. Yeah, I think for low 40s, this is a pretty compelling product.
Yeah, there's 360 camera.
And
You
a
still got,
long ass warranty.
yeah, it's really good warranty.
That's something, as I don't know. Kia, I'm always like on the fence with. They have some products that are a hit, some are a miss for me. I think, yeah, I think you got the point, which is that mid trim, it's just a good price point, a good
Yeah,
value.
absolutely.
Cool.
That's about it for today. We got a lot of things covered, but we'll come back next week. Maybe we'll narrow down our choices on our off-roading
Yeah,
vehicle.
send in your suggestions, links to J.Mak's Instagram, and spam him, overload him with terrible options, like all the Suzuki X90s you can find.
Oh,
What
that's
else is
fine.
terrible?
No one's gonna find any X90s anyways.
There's one on Marketplace that I've been
Oh,
looking at. It's red, very low. It's too nice to wheel. That is the
um,
problem.
I would actually really love an Isuzu Axiom.
Ooh, or the whatchamacallit, the really, what
Oh,
is the funky Isuzu called?
uh
Oh my
oh
God, how can Via
I
Cross.
Via Cross, yeah.
Via Cross. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
send us those if you see them. If you know someone who's selling one, send it our way. We have a
For
budget of not much, like about an iPhone Pro Max, maybe two iPhone Pro Max
I was
worth
gonna
of
say,
budget. Yeah,
I can spend more than an
and a
iPhone
pair of
Pro Max.
AirPods. Um, and then keep it under that, and then we'll see.
We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.